this where we break out? Such as it'll be.
It was a little ad lib here, so it was supposed to be in real and different, and so I'm making it up as we go along. Please sit close so we can.
So it doesn't matter right
Because
now.
I'm going to ask you all to share stories.
Oh, I don't have a story.
High holiday stories. Something about your youth. Think about something. You don't have to all. If you're on the spot, don't worry about it. But we have an hour to fill, so.
I thought you were going to read a story.
I'm going to read it. No, I know. It was a little.
Oh, well, let me think about it. I guess we got a story.
I'll fill it up with some talk about Temple Circle.
Oh, that's good.
And I'll. Hi,
I'm Barbara
Rothstein.
Sobel.
Barbara, nice to meet you.
And
I'm Marilyn Rothstein.
Maryland, okay, thank you. I live out of town in Alexander City, so I grew up in this sanctuary, in this temple. But I just don't come that often. I used to come more than I come now. Traffic has just gotten so bad. And I would just feel better watching it now.
There are other Sokol here. Is that all one family?
Right, they're cousins. My husband
We need
lives
Sokol
in
in Florida too, but I got.
probably not. I don't think so either. There is one family of Sobols here, but it was not our lineage. My husband's lineage, husband of blessed memories lineage.
Okay, well, I'm glad you're here. I hope more people are coming. They told me we're on at 1:30. Does everyone have 1:30?
It was just enough time to go to the bathroom, I think.
Okay, so I don't know. They say I have to be here to be seen. I don't really care about being seen. Good Yontiv, everyone. Good Yontiv. So we're going to talk. Bring this up. I hope we can be seen. So Susan Koretsky. Everybody knows Susan? Who doesn't know Susan? And if you're watching Susan and Barry, good Yontiv to you. They are in London with their daughter. They went there a little earlier than they planned. They didn't want to have any traffic issues, and they wanted to be there on time, and asked if I would substitute. Come on in, Mike. Hello. Come in, Roxanne. Good Yontif. Well, I hope we're all going to tell stories. So I ask that you sit close, and when someone feels so moved to tell a story, there's a seat right here next to me. And if, oh, it's not loud. I have to talk more like this. It's my favorite thing, being on microphone. So I'll start again a little bit. Come on in. Come sit close, please. This was going to be in Wheel Hall, and it would have been a little more intimate, so we're going to sit here. So my name is Marilyn Rothstein. I'm a member of Temple Emanu-El for 5 years. Susan Koretsky, I think all of you probably know her, was going to lead a high holiday version of her temple circle called Stories, Music, and Laughter. Susan and Barry went to London a few days earlier than originally planned to be with their London family for the holidays, and asked me if I would substitute for her. It's a hard thing to do, to substitute for Susan Koretsky, but I will do my best with your help to fill those shoes. And so, good Yontiv to all of you. So there's a whole format that we do for Temple Circles, since this is her version of Temple Circles, and it starts with usually noshing and schmoozing. And in today's version, I think we'll just introduce ourselves so that not, huh?
I thought I was here for the noshing.
Oh, well, okay, well, we're going to schmooze. We're going to leave the noshing. I said it was a high holiday version. You made me nervous, Michael. Oh, they're leaving. He's leaving already. So, obviously we're not going to nosh, but we're going to do a little schmoozing. And I'd like to start the schmoozing with just us introducing ourselves so we know who's in this intimate room. And just by saying your name, how long you've been a member of Emanu-El, if you are a member, and why you're here, why you came this afternoon for this 1:30 session when so many people are not here. So I'll start. Marilyn Rothstein. I've been a member of Emanu-El for 5 years. We moved here from South Florida at that time. And I'm here because, and I'll go into it in a little story later on, but my great-grandparents spent the whole day in temple on Yom Kippur. And that's what I learned in my primary growing up years. And there's something in me that says I need to do that. And so that's why I'm here, and I'm always here. And then, of course, temple stories, music, and laughter sort of gave it a little oomph. But anyhow, so because we're not in Wheel, and because Rabbi wants this to be all Zoomed, and hopefully everyone's seeing it, Susan, right?
Barbara.
Barbara, close. Barbara, could you come up and share? Of course, you have to be seen. So
Okay, well, thank you. I'm a regular watching services on the webcast. I'm Barbara Sokol. I live in Alexander City, Alabama. One of who have identified with us are 10 of us scattered about in our area. So I watch the Zoom programs pretty well, and I was going to tell you that in the Zoom program, you can see people on the first couple of rows close to the inside.
Okay, all right. So
I grew up in this congregation and have wonderful memories with people. And we were generational. We were, most of the youngsters who grew up in Birmingham, who went to Sunday school, a lot of us were in the children's choir, which is, I noticed I counted the choir members, and I think I counted 25, unless I counted one or two twice. But our children's choir was every bit that big. I was born in 1946, so we were baby boomers. And so every time we would come through, or those 2 years after us and 3 years after us, we were all boomers, and the temple just had to expand. It was just this building and below the education school. Of course, you didn't ask for history of the area, but the temple that I remember. But all of our classes were downstairs, and we had all of our activities downstairs. So that's where I started with Temple Emanu-El. I do have a legacy at Temple Emanu-El. My great-grandparents immigrated from the Germany area. It was close in the 1800s, because my great-grandfather on my father's side fought for the South. They had just moved here. He's 16 years old. He and his brother moved to Alabama. But I guess they followed a route where, however, they came in through Detroit down the river, because they settled in Tuscumbia, came over from Arkansas. And then I think when he served, he was in Arkansas, but it came to Tuscumbia. Well, he and his wife, he married, I guess they brought their, wives at some point, or marriages were arranged. And so they settled in Tuscumbia. And what I have learned particularly, well, I don't know that, is this appropriate to talk a little bit about? We're talking.
Than we thought,
okay, well, I was going to tell you from what I have learned in living in a small community, Alexander City, by hearing the stories of the Jewish families who came before me, I began to realize that Jewish people came where there was industry, so we had a number of, in my great-grandfather's case, it was probably the Tennessee Valley, the Tennessee River, all the economy that was going on in the Tuscumbia area, they have locks and dams of shipping and so forth. So they came, and they were merchants in a number of open to business and so forth. Well, he and I guess there was such a small Jewish community in a growing state. They got together from north and south when they formed Temple Emanu-El, and both my great-grandfather and mother on my father's side, their names are on the marble as some of the chartered members of Temple Emanu-El. So I feel like that this legacy goes beyond years. I have really learned in recent years, not recent like in 5 years, but recent as in 10 to 20 years, this afternoon service, it was just a great way to spend the day, if you're fasting particularly and not wanting to be home near where everything is available and you have to have a little more resistance than ordinary. The afternoon service provided that for many of us. And as we all know in our congregation, by the way, welcome to Alabama for 5 years, we have so much talent in our congregation so far as the arts. And we had our assistant rabbi at that time, Scott Hausman-Weiss, who is in Houston now, he and his family. His family's grown up now, and we watched them all grow. He was very creative in creating services that would pull in a lot of our talented artists and musicians. A lot of the people who read had beautiful, beautiful voices, theater. And it was just so, I just loved it. So, felt so good. And so this time, having this particular service has always been very special for me.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And before we continue with our introductions, thank you, keep reminding me. Before we continue our introductions, I just thought I would share, and I know Susan would want this done, because this was a great segue, I think, into the mission of Temple Circles. And I'm just going to read it to you, that our Temple Circle initiative encourages our Temple family to form groups, and we're a group now. This is our 1:30 afternoon discussion group, that have shared interests and passions in order to seek, engage, and transform caring and supportive relationships among themselves, with the Temple Emanu-El community, and with Judaism. And Barbara, I'd like to thank you for starting us off. I've gotten to know you better, especially your name and your story and the history, and thank you for helping us live into that mission. Mark? Yes?
Shouldn't you let Ginger go first?
Sure, Ginger.
Ladies first.
Barbara, you're a hard act to follow. I don't have all that history. I'm Ginger Held. I have been a member of Temple Emanu-El for 46 years, because that's how long I've been married. I'm originally from Montgomery, Alabama, and I will tell you this, just a little tidbit. Mark Cohen was my Sunday school teacher growing up. So, what I remember about the holidays is that my father was very religious. He grew up in an Orthodox home, kept kosher and all that, but of course moving to Montgomery was kind of difficult. But he always walked to shul on the holidays. And so I'm one of 4 girls, so we would take turns walking with him. And it's not like we lived right down the street. I mean, it was probably several miles, right, Mark? But so that was something that we all looked forward to, because that was our one-on-one time with my father. Then the other thing that I remember is we always had single people for Rosh Hashanah lunch, break the fast. And my father happened to be very active in shul. So he would see strangers come in and sitting by themselves. And so after services, my mother never knew who was coming after shul. She never knew how many people were coming. But my father tells a story that on one particular holiday, he saw a couple men in the back by themselves, so he decided that he would go back and ask them to join us for holiday lunch. And they looked at him and they told him that they actually were from Maxwell Field, which meant they were serving. There was a federal prison there, which was considered the country club, but they allowed these men to come and worship. But of course, they couldn't come to lunch because they had to go back to the country club.
Thank you so much. So these are the title was Stories, Music, and Laughter. We've had our music, beautiful music, so I don't think any of us want to try to match that. But if you do, that's okay too. And now we've had a little laughter. Thank you very much. And before, Mark, you give your stories, I have something else I thought I might read, or right now.
You got the mic.
Because
You're the boss.
well, I'm not the boss, but it just seems so apropos. And I found this last night. I know. Put the mic up, put my glasses up. I know. In the book of Kings, in which God asks King Solomon what he wishes for, can't read. Solomon responds, not by asking God for long life or for riches or for the destruction of his enemies. Rather, Solomon asks for a lev shomeah, a listening heart. For he understood that through listening and gaining a deep understanding of the experience of others, that we can acquire true wisdom, and only then can we make informed and compassionate choices of how to act in the world. Although we may not be able to receive wisdom directly from God in the way that Solomon did, we can all begin the journey to acquiring a lev shomeah through storytelling. And so maybe I should have read that a little sooner, but I thought that was apropos. So Mark,
Thank you.
you're on.
I'm Mark Cohen, as Ginger said. I'm also from Montgomery, not originally from Montgomery. My parents both were from New York. My father's first job after getting his PhD was at Maxwell Air Force Base, not the federal prison, at Air University. The Air Force is a very young service, so all of their schools were located at Maxwell Air Force Base. So my parents moved there when I was 5 in 1950, bringing with them my youngest sister and her brother. They're twins. And so we belonged to the same synagogue. We belonged to Agudath Israel. And there were 3 synagogues in Montgomery at the time. There was a Sephardic synagogue, as Chaim, and then there was a Reform synagogue, and then the conservative synagogue. So going to temple with my parents was an all-day affair on Yom Kippur. I don't know that I appreciated it so much then, but I do now, and I really enjoy coming and just spending the day here. It's very meaningful to me, and just appreciate the opportunity. Montgomery was a different place to grow up because all of our family was in New York. But one thing about Montgomery, it was a very, very welcoming community. As Ginger said, her father would would, invite people over. At many of the schools at Maxwell, they always had foreign military officers, and oftentimes there were officers there from Israel. So we made sure that we had them over. That's it.
That's all right. So Susan would tell you that someone's story may make you think of another one. So, if it brings up something, keep it in mind. We'll try to go around and give everyone a chance, but this isn't like just one for one. If you have 4 stories, we're okay with that also. So, Mike, you want to come up and tell us a little bit something about yourself and about why you're here right now? And
she told me to come. That's why I'm here. I didn't even know what we're doing. So
no, neither did I.
I kind of, as she was telling us what we were supposed to do, I kind of got up and walked out because I did turn off the ringer on my cell phone, but I did not turn my cell phone off, so it was making noise. It was buzzing in my pocket, and kind of not all that atypical of Yom Kippur. I really do. I have never missed Yom Kippur in Temple. Knock on wood. But I have had a few interesting Yom Kippurs. The call that I got was very bizarre, and I wasn't going to answer it, except it was from the rabbi. And that's the last person you expect to be getting a call from on Yom Kippur, and you figure you better answer that. But it was not a particularly unusual call. It's I have taken people to the hospital 3 times on Yom Kippur at Temple Emanu-El, and it was about one of my patients who's having a bad day. But anyway, so I won't, because of HIPAA constraints, I won't go into any of those, and I'll go back a little while. For those of you who don't know, I grew up in Tuscaloosa, and my dad was the rabbi at Hillel down there.
Just tell us your name.
Oh, darn, shoot. I forgot my name.
Hold on, let me see.
Mike Honan. Oh, okay. Sorry. I'm Mike Honan. So I grew up in Tuscaloosa. My dad was the Hillel rabbi down there. So Yom Kippur was at Hillel, which was across the street from Denny Stadium. It wasn't yet Bryant Denny Stadium because he was just a football coach then. And there was, I think it was 1974, there was a game where Florida State came in on Yom Kippur with a 16-game losing streak. And we had a pretty good Bryant team in 74. It wasn't the best, but it was pretty good. And it was really a very quiet day. It wasn't like there was a Georgia game where we were down 14-13 in the fourth quarter and won 28-14, which was a very loud ending of the game. But this game got extraordinarily loud. In the fourth quarter, I think we were losing 7-6, and we scored a safety to win 8-7, I think is what happened. But that really is not the most memorable. We had a few memorable ones because they tended to be on football games. For some, we had 2 of them on football days. But the most memorable one was the year before that, where there was a different kind of thing going on, and we actually canceled afternoon services on Yom Kippur in 1973 because there was a big news item on that day, and that was the 73 Yom Kippur War. I think we had a kind of somewhat distressing sermon today where we heard about how bad a shape the world is in for our people. But on that day, Israel was invaded by all the Arab forces around them that were going to wipe them out because we're all going to be in Temple. And we didn't do as well as I think we could have had we been better prepared on a different day of the week or a different day of the year. But we were watching all the news on the TV, so we watched TV on Yom Kippur instead of the afternoon service that year. So times seem pretty bad right now. There's a lot of craziness going on in the world, and it's easy to get very distraught about a lot of what's going on. And I think the reason for it is I think a lot of us are feeling, I think there's something that we've learned to feel oppressed. And if we feel bad, we're blaming somebody else for our oppression. And I would encourage all of you to try to face your days with a little more kindness and a little more understanding, a little more compassion, so that you can feel a little more uplifted than feeling beaten down and oppressed. And try not to curse all those people that are oppressing you, and try to figure out a way to bless them and be compassionate for them. And I think your days and your year hopefully will be a lot happier if you can achieve that. It's hard sometimes, but if you really dig and keep digging for the good stuff, you hopefully find it. So that's what I got to say.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you. Roxanne, do you want to share something? So just another little plug for Temple Circles. I can't help it. I can't help it. I know everyone's name, almost everyone's name here. Well, okay, 75% of the people's names here because of Temple Circles. And it's that has made me feel so comfortable and allows me to sit up here and feel comfortable with all of you. So thank you. Thank you.
I'm Roxanne Traveloot. I have been a member here for 32 years. And I just want to thank Marilyn for bringing Temple Circles to Temple Emanu-El, especially at the time of COVID. This is a wonderful program, whether we have COVID or not, but it has especially allowed us to become more personal friends instead of just acquaintances as we come to Temple. But especially for so many of us who really may not feel so welcome here, it has just been the best gift for our whole congregation. So I just want to say thank you. And of course, I did not know until this year that you had a grandson who became a bar mitzvah, correct? So I feel like maybe that was some of your motivation to move here, but I just want to thank your daughter for coming to Birmingham, because if you're the bonus that we got, we scored way high, you and Earl. So thank you. So I have been here. Roxanne Traveloot. Good. So I've been here 32 years. I'm a Jew by choice. So today for me is very meaningful. It's very much like Good Friday is, a day of confession, a day of reconciliation. So it's very meaningful. And I guess I just wanted to comment a little about our new prayer book. I have really enjoyed all the commentary down below. There have been a few times I've pointed at Mike and said, this is really weird. So there are a few things that, but for the most part, I mean, I've been like, wow, that makes so much sense. And so anyway, I just wanted to say, I see Ginger nodding her head. So that's really all I had to say, and I've enjoyed the music. Cantor Whitner is it just takes my breath away. So, but anyway, that's really all I had to say. I love being a member of this congregation.
Thank you, Roxanne. And so, I don't know your name. Come on, do you want to share something, even short? If you're ready. You okay? You don't have to. When you're ready. And I don't know your name either.
Hi, I'm Shane.
Hi, Shane. You want to come up and tell us a little about your name and how long you've been here and why you're sitting here today, right now? Come on. You could do it. Wait till I ask Earl. Oh, I left the best for last. No, I'm only kidding.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Shane Prunty. I actually just came to Birmingham like a month ago. I came here to go to school at UAB. this is actually only my second service here. My first service was last night at Kol Nidre. So it's my first time actually going to a High Holy Day service that wasn't at my own congregation out in California. So, yeah. Yeah, no, so it's definitely been a different experience. I mean, it's still like, a lot of like this parts of the synagogue, and especially since, this is also a Reformed synagogue, just like the one I have at home, it still feels, there's a lot of things, even in the prayer book as well, like the only real differences I could really feel between my home congregation and like this congregation was kind of like maybe parts of the Torah service and the sermon, but the sermon's different from everything. And even this sermon too, I think I can dig back to a time where my mom talked about this same subject as well. My mom's the actual rabbi of the congregation I go to in California. So, yeah, as you know, I study at UAB down the road. I actually usually, back at home, what I'll usually do is my sister and I, we will come for the morning service of Yom Kippur, and then we will go home so we can like prepare the breakfast meal, which, it's really fun to cook when you're starving, but it's mostly because like our mom is since our mom's the rabbi, she has to stay at temple all day long. So, but for me, for now, I'm not preparing a breakfast meal, and I definitely just want to experience this temple as much as I can, and like I don't know what else I'm going to do if I go back to the college. What am I going to do? Like study while I'm hungry? Like not really going to happen. So it's really nice to just be here and actually like go on. I plan to stay here for like the this thing, the afternoon service, and then the morning and the evening service, and then go back probably. But, yes, that too. Yes. It's a work in progress. I'll figure it out. I'm not sure if I'll like find a place here or just eat at my campus.
You can come to our house.
Thank you. I appreciate that offer. I do have a lot of commitments after this, though.
I have
So.
an 18-year-old granddaughter.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Oh,
How
dang.
tall are you?
I'm. Yeah. Yeah.
A little Southern Jewish humor right there.
Well, maybe Jewish everywhere. So, I'm sorry.
No, it's
But you are welcome to come to our house.
appreciate that.
What are you studying?
I'm studying mechanical engineering. Yeah.
And the name of your, Mark?
Where did you come from in California?
I came from Orange County, California. Specifically, I live like right next to Anaheim, and a little bit like close to Long Beach, like in that area, about an hour south of Los Angeles.
The name of your congregation?
Temple Beth David.
All right, and your rabbi? Your mom?
Yeah, yeah. My mom's Rabbi Nancy Myers. That's her.
Hey,
Yeah.
very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome. And I was serious about the invitations, actually at my daughter's house, so I'm sure she won't mind. And if she does, well, she won't. I know she won't. Earl, do you have something to tell us a little bit? Come on, you'll figure out something. Come on up. You can tell them how. Never mind. Never mind.
Well, I guess I can just introduce myself. It's Earl Rothstein. Marilyn's my wife. We came here, I guess you already know that, about 5.5 years ago. And biggest reason is our daughter is here with our son-in-law and 3 grandchildren. And we wanted to be able to spend time with them. Although sports has somewhat interfered with a lot of the time that we spend with them, but we get to spend time. We'll be there tonight for breakfast. We enjoy, I happen to enjoy Birmingham very much. I mean, we lived in Florida for 32 years, and it was great. and we had a lovely home there and a lot of great friends, but it was really nice moving here. It's a completely different experience, completely different in more ways than one. One of the interesting things, I think it was probably 2 years ago, the last time we had Yom Kippur here in the congregation. In the middle of services, they gave us the score of the Alabama game. So, I mean, to keep everybody here. So that was rather interesting. That's a typical Birmingham, Alabama type thing. As far as the circles go, like everybody else has said, I think they've been great. I have been in 2 of Susan's music, laughter, and storytelling, and it's been great. And we've also done some out of the circles storytelling. We went up to, where was it? Florence, Alabama, where they have storytelling. And it was really something completely new to us and was very enjoyable. And also, of course, we participated and were leaders of Havdalah Under the Stars. And it was just a fabulous program. And we've got one going this year and probably a second one this year. And it really got us to know the people that were in it. And it's only a 6-week or something like that program, but it's great. It's great. And I look forward to other ones. And thank you very much.
Well, that was a very good segue because Susan Koretsky, who is known for leading stories, music, and laughter, is switching her circle this session and combining it with a wait list that we had for Havdalah Under the Stars. And she's now going to call it Stories, Laughter, and Havdalah. And there will be room for a few more people in it before it fills up. And so I'm going to segue into a story that I know that Susan wanted me to share with you, if you don't mind. And I'm going to read it because it's her story and I don't know it by heart. So one of her stories, hi, good Yantiv. You're welcome to come join us, please. One of her, she often has a theme of her get-togethers. So the theme of this one particular get-together was called A Bad Idea, where everyone would share something that turned out to be a bad idea. So the title of her story was Our Late Uncle Benny, if you're watching, Susan. On my husband's side of the family, our very favorite uncle was Uncle Benny. Unfortunately, Uncle Benny passed away. His funeral was on a very rainy day in New Orleans. We drove over from Birmingham. We adored him. My uncle and his brother were pallbearers along with a few other family members. Uncle Benny's son, Harold, is a prominent attorney in New Orleans. Due to his longevity with the firm, almost all of his co-workers attended. Here we are, a pretty big crowd, all assembled for Uncle Benny's funeral. Family, friends, neighbors, you name it. He was loved by all. About that time, the funeral home director approached the pallbearers and said, "It's time to begin." So the pallbearers walked over to the hearse and opened the back door to get the casket. But no Uncle Benny. They forgot him. 30 minutes later, that same hearse came back with Uncle Benny. Yes, he had a beautiful ceremony. His life was celebrated with a virtuous, warm eulogy. He was honored with a proper, dignified burial. While waiting, Harold addressed the crowd. Shaking his head in wonderment, Harold reminisced. My dad was always late. Everywhere he went, he was late. We used to tease him and say, Dad, you are always late. You're going to be late for your own funeral. And sure enough, Uncle Benny pulled it off. So, all right, so if you can't hear them, there's lots of chuckling and laughing. So that's Susan's story. So, Robin, we've been introducing ourselves, welcoming. Maybe you came in to join us or not. We've been sharing some stories about ourselves and temple life and the high holidays, and specifically this time, why we're all hanging out here. Would you like to come do that? Okay, great.
So am I supposed to share a funny story? Am I supposed to?
Well, so you could say anything, something that comes to mind, to tell who you are and how long you're a
Okay,
member.
so my name is Robin Berger. My husband Hilton and I have been members of Temple Emanu-El since we moved to Birmingham in 2001. And we've raised 3 children here. And we love the congregation. And tomorrow, I'm going to get choked up. Tomorrow, I'm going to share a funny story after I start to cry. Tomorrow, I'm going to Toronto to be with my parents who are aging. And I want to share a funny story about my mom. My mom was always my biggest champion. She loved hearing me sing. She's the one who pushed me out the door when I was in 9th grade to go try a Jewish youth group, which I thought was the worst idea on the planet. And then I set eyes on a song leader and just fell in love and decided that was exactly what I wanted to do. And my mom is a Jewish educator. And the funny story is that I always say I got my passion for music from my mother, but my mother is totally tone deaf. Oh. And the funny story is, right now it just popped in my head that my mom often got called on by her synagogue to go and lead Shiva services. And she always, if I was in town, would ask me to come and do the music. Well, I was doing the music and I suddenly had a blank and I could not remember how the melody was supposed to go. And so somehow I started singing and making it up on the spot. And God bless my mother, she sang along like we'd been singing the same melody together for 50 years. And that just popped in my head, just remembering. Anyway, so now I get to go and be with my parents tomorrow and for the weekend. And it's very befitting during the high holidays that I get to be with them. So that's my little story. I was born and raised in Toronto. Yep, went from Toronto to Boston to Birmingham. Yeah.
I knew I liked your accent. I'm sorry.
You know, it's really hard when I have to stand during a Yom Kippur service and say I'm sorry about 100 times, knowing that everyone who hears me saying it is going, interesting accent. Anyway, Chag Sameach, everybody.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Tilton? No? Okay. Well, you go with Robin. And it's Tilton. Tilton with a T? Oh, Hilton with, like a hotel. I won't forget that, I promise you. All right, nice to meet you, Hilton. Were you saying something? No. Okay. So any other stories come to mind that someone would like to share at this point? Ginger's story brought up something about my youth. My great-grandparents, which I mentioned before, were very conservative Jews, maybe Orthodox, kept kosher home, walked to temple. They were founders of the Brooklyn congregation that they belonged to, and so, you know, they wanted to make sure the family sort of followed in their footsteps. And so we lived several miles away, and I would take a bus to 2 blocks before the temple and then walk. And I'd walk in, and Grandma would say, "You walked, right?" I said, "Yeah, I did walk," which was true. And so it reminded me of that. And I also, you know, those were younger days when we lived in Brooklyn. And there was a time like this time when it would take a break. I never went to whatever was happening. The youth would stand outside socializing. I was younger than that. So I used to walk to my grandmother's house and break the fast early with her rugelach And I mean, she knew, but I never told her. And it just, every year brings back such wonderful memories. And there's also one particular tune when the ark closes, when we're closing the ark. Not my great-grandmother, but my grandmother used to always be behind me with this kind of off-tune soprano voice. And every time we sing that, I hear her voice. I'm hoping, and Ginger and I were talking about this a little earlier, I'm hoping, I knew I would cry if I shared it, that my kids will remember something about the high holidays. I don't know. I hope. So, anyway, that was funny. Wasn't that laughter?
But you didn't hear your grandmother's voice today.
I did.
You did?
Well, they did at the very last, those last two lines, so.
The tune was a little bit different.
Before it, yes. But then, phew, thank goodness. Anybody else?
Well, Robin was one of the ones.
Come, because they keep the people out in
Okay.
that land.
In
can't hear
Everland.
you.
Earlier, Robin, I had mentioned about our talented program that we had with the creative Rabbi Scott Hasman-Weiss. And I was going to say Robin was one of the many talented people who shared her skills and performed through music. It really made us feel special, and it was just that was a special time. So I did want to acknowledge Robin. She was one of our gifts during that service. This is not a Yom Kippur story.
That's okay.
But back to living in the small town. It was one Passover, and because we live in such a small town, we have always had invited the few Jewish people to our community. And now, the generation, our family, there's just, like I said, just a few families left. But one day I got a call from Marion Cohen. Marion of blessed memory is Faye Levin's mother. Marion and Oscar, Faye grew up in Alexander City, and Marion and Oscar were very prominent residents in Alexander City. But anyway, so Marion called and said, Barbara, I had gotten this unusual call from this person who he plays golf. He is from Israel, but he goes to school in Dade County, and they were in Alex City playing our Central Alabama, well, actually then it was the junior college, Alexander City Junior College golf match. And it's Passover, and he was looking for a place to come. And he looked in the phone book and saw was looking for Kohanes and Levites, and found Cohen. And I explained to him that we're going to our daughter's, who lives in Birmingham, but call Barbara Sokol. So this person called us, and my husband, he was already in Alex City, so my husband of blessed memory went and picked him up, and he was absolutely delightful, which lent us the pleasure out of knowing that we set that extra place for the stranger who comes. And I have always since then shared that part of our, during Passover at our Seder. So you just never know who might be along. And, but anyway, I thought I'd share that little part it was our holiday. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. So anybody else? Thoughts? Nothing? Okay, well, we're almost at I think we're supposed to go to 2:30? Yes?
How much time?
What do you want to do? Want to take a long story? We got time. No, but Rabbi's not here, Cantor's not here. I think we're good.
So there's this little story we read today during services. I just thought there's some really interesting things in this. There's this, hopefully I'm not boring y'all, but we're all kind of stuck here, so we're just looking for something to fill the space. So we read this interesting story today that there's a really cool word in it. And the Torah Parsha today was from Nitzavim. And Nitzavim is a very interesting word. So I'm going to read I looked at the first sentence. The first sentence is really long, but it's Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem Lifnei Adonai Elohechem. You stand this day, all of you, before you in the presence of Adonai your God. Your tribal heads, elders, and officials, every man, woman, and child of Israel, and the stranger in your midst of your camp. From the one who cuts your wood to the one who draws your water, to enter into the covenant of Adonai your God, and the oath that Adonai your God makes with you this day to establish you as God's people and to be your God as promised to you and sworn to your ancestors Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's a long sentence. And not with you alone do I make this covenant, this oath, but with each one who stands here among us this day in the presence of Adonai our God, and with each one who is not here among us today. So that's all of us. And we have covenants, we have multiple renditions of the covenant throughout the Torah. And this is the fulfillment of the covenant that God made with Abraham. And so he told Abraham he was going to get two things. He was going to get that his descendants would be as numerous as the stars of the sky one place, the sands of the sea. Then the other thing was the covenant of the land of Israel, that you would inherit, you receive the land of Israel. And this day that he's talking about is the day of Deuteronomy. It's the day when Moses is standing on the plains of Moab telling the children of Israel what's to come in the future. Well, the place that's across from where he's standing is where, you remember the story of Jacob's ladder. So Jacob flees from his brother Esau and goes and stops at Bethel and lies down and puts his head on a rock and has this dream, and there's this ladder that goes to heaven. And God comes down and stands beside him. And anyway, God tells him, so he erects a pillar at the site of this place in Bethel. And the word for pillar is nitzaveh in Hebrew. And here, it's atem nitzavim. You stand this day. I think that is not the usual word for stand. Usually, I think I know in Bethel it's on the front day, lifnei, know before whom you stand. I think it's omed is the usual word for stand, but here we're standing like pillars. The other place where we're pillars is when we go to Sinai, there are the 12 tribes, each erect a pillar at the bottom of Mount Sinai to represent the children of Israel. Each one is represented by a pillar, and it's a pillar of our relationship to God. When Jacob has his dream, he asks for God to protect him on his journey, and God will protect him going north, south, east, and west, so that everywhere that Jacob goes, I have this image of a pillar connecting him to God. Just as with the children of Israel wandering through the desert, they have the pillar of smoke by day, the pillar of God, of fire by night. So it's this thing that connects us with God. It's the same pillar that at the end of the flood, they take the kaporet, the roof off the ark, and there's the sky after the waters have started to recede, connecting man to God. It's the same pillar, the same thing that Moses is in his ark, his teva, that he's floating down the river toward Pharaoh's daughter. There's a little hole in the top. And it's God has the opportunity to look down upon Moses and protect him so that he can do what he's doing. And so this is kind of the fulfillment of God's covenant with Abraham. And it's the covenant that we have to fulfill our part with God. We will always be God's children. We'll always be his people. And I think it's so easy to not feel God's presence, but he's there if we just look for it and we connect to him, and he'll be there to protect us and take care of us and love us. And that is the story of our people, from Abraham to Jacob to Moses to Noah to standing here on the plains of Moab across the Jordan River from Eretz Yisrael. And it's our story of where we are today. We're connecting up there with God, who hopefully will continue to look after us and protect us. And hopefully we can do our job of trying to be kind to his other children and take care of them the best way that we can. So I think that's our story. So hopefully we can take that story and kind of go forward with it.
Thanks, Mom. Any Yashakoa, and anyone want to add on, say something different, or comment on? We have commentaries. Some, as Roxanne said, make perfect sense. Some are a little like, oh, really? And I wasn't commenting on your commentary, but someone might have something. It was just so, as it always is, the Torah portion and the sermon were so perfect together in terms of our land that was given to us. So thank you for helping us live into to our tagline for Temple Circles, and that's doing Jewish together. And you certainly did that with us, and everyone else helped to do that. So Yasher Koach to everyone here, and good Yom Tov.